to be interviewing. That's fine. I'm so excited to be interviewing Jazmin Gill. She's an amazing friend. I often say that when I met her, as I'm telling people about you, Jazmin, I was like, I instantly was home. We had known each other for a long time, and yet we just met. So I love that we had that instant familiarity, and I was like, there's definitely something more to this, and I'll have to dive in with this lady. So the other thing that I thought was fascinating is that you are very open about your spiritual journey. And some people, it's funny because our conversations, I get hung up on that. My own spiritual journey, right? It's confusing. It's those, one of the things that's a hot topic with people. And I'll just set the stage. And this is a vulnerability of mine. My family was Catholic. I was raised by my mom, who was a recovering Catholic and a Universalist. I married my husband. He's a devout Christian. And, if I had any push-pull of spiritual confusion, it was definitely because of my upbringing, but also like this beautiful man that has such an amazing faith. And so it's been a wonderful journey. And I know that people, it's really up to them what their beliefs are, right? I choose to focus on Christ and my prayers. And then I've had a lot of, and especially since knowing you, I've had a lot of angels that talk to me. So I know that sounds like here I'm out, just telling out my crazy. But I love that became something that was, that felt normal to me, to be able to just get those messages and be divinely guided. So I'm going to turn it over to you now that I've spilled my my interesting thoughts, and I'd love to hear your journey a little bit, because what also really fascinated me was that you were in a place of being very sick. Mm-hmm. And then when you kind of opened your gifts again, that was something that went away. So Go ahead, turning it over to your story.
Awesome. Well, yeah, when April and I met, we were at a retreat, and I was there doing sessions, and I was speaking, and I was super nervous. But talking with April, I think she does this with everybody. Like, everybody instantly becomes her best friend. Everybody instantly is comfortable. Everybody is welcomed. Everybody is loved. That makes all the difference, right? So even if it's that one person welcoming you in, which a lot of people were so welcoming, but there was something about April that I was like, ooh, I like you. Like, I think I know you already. And it was just so amazing and so fun. So any space that she creates, I'm always like, yes, I am in, I am there. So for me, I also had a Catholic side of my family and a Christian side of my family, like Southern Bible Belt. But we didn't live super close or go to church with either one. And so growing up, I had some interesting experiences where I was always Christian. I always had this like knowing of who Christ was. I always had this place where I felt like I almost had this like sacred place inside of me where I could go and have protection. And it was like my intuition and that knowing just collided, and I was going to be protected. I was going to be okay, because my upbringing, it was not traditional by any means. And I'm not going to get too far into it unless April gives me the okay to, but it was not traditional at all. It was actually,
I would say absolutely okay to go into whatever you feel called to.
So, I mean, it was a little bit on the dangerous side. My parents were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing and involved in businesses that they should not have been involved in, which invited people who were kind of on the wrong side of the law to be around on occasion. And so in that, this is going to sound really strange, but I have an open mind. So as a little girl, I would hear these voices, and it was like, Jazmin, don't go that way. Jazmin, don't go over there. Don't go talk to that person. And when I was young, I mean, it seemed totally normal to me, right? Like nobody else can hear it. Nobody's telling you it's wrong or it's right or anything like that. Nobody's guiding you. But as I got a little bit older, I started to realize nobody else is hearing that. No one else is being guided and being told these things. Oh my gosh, I'm weird. I'm strange. Oh, shoot. Like, what do I do about that? I'm going to move this back just a little bit. So, so I said, no more. I'm not doing this anymore. I knew it was an outside force. I knew I wasn't crazy as far as like having a mental disorder or anything. And I said, we're done. And I closed it off. I didn't realize for almost 30 years until I'll tell you about like getting sick and things. I didn't realize for 30 years that those voices were angels speaking to me, that I had been given the gift. Everybody, honestly, has been given the gift of an army of angels to protect them and to guide them and to send them intuition and to send them like little tips. If you're driving in a car and all of a sudden, you know, you get this feeling of, I need to look up or I need to stop, and then a car goes zooming by that could have T-boned you, I believe that those are some of those angels and that intuition colliding together and going, we're here to protect you. We're here to guide you. And that was what was happening. But I didn't realize that. I just thought it was weird. Oh, I'm a weirdo. I'm not doing this, right? Like who wants to be the weirdo growing up? Nobody wants to stand out like that. And just even recently, I was telling my mom about this. She was like, I think I've told her before, but she said, that makes a lot of sense now, because as you were really little, you'd say some really strange things. But so it was, I have 5 kids. I'm a mom of 5. Me and my husband just celebrated our 18-year anniversary. And right after we had our 4th, I started developing some symptoms. And it was actually before that. It was probably like when we had our 2nd, maybe about to have our 3rd. I started making really poor choices because I started putting my family ahead of my needs. I started ignoring myself, honestly, and just thinking, I need to take care of these people. It was such a huge adjustment to all of a sudden, like not all of a sudden have a family, but it was so quick for me. It was something that like we chose into, but it was still a shock, right? I think anytime you have kids, you're like, oh my gosh, this is way more work than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful and I loved it and I still love it. But at the same time, it was such an adjustment and nobody was there telling me. Almost I needed to be forced into like, hey, you need to eat a certain way. You need to take care of yourself better. You not just like dip off the kids' leftovers on their plates, but really think about yourself. So I started having some really strange symptoms. And long story short, it was dementia induced Hashimoto's. So I was having symptoms where my whole reality would change, where it was like I would recognize everything, but I couldn't make sense of it. And I would be home alone with the kids and I'd know the kids, I'd recognize them, but my house seemed strange. Certain items seemed strange. It was almost like, you know, when you're walking through, like you're in a dream and you're like walking through your house and you're like, this is my house, but it's weird. Right. And so that's what was happening to me. And I was just like, I would call my husband and I would have to pick up my cell phone and hand like finger dial his number because I couldn't figure out how to use it. I didn't like know how to scroll. I didn't know how to like go through the contacts and find him. It was very, very odd. So I would call him and say, hey, this is happening. If anything happens to me, I want you to be able to explain basically to the coroner, the police, whatever, that this is what was going on. Mentally, I was like, emotionally, I was okay. I was scared, and mentally I was like safe, right? Because I knew I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't feeling dangerous. I was like, there's something wrong. Part of my mind is just not okay. And I ended up going to 7 different doctors. And after all of those doctors said, well, you just had a baby 6 months ago. Maybe it's the hormones. Maybe you should get off your, your birth control. I was doing birth control at the time. All of these different things. And they just said, just give it time. And I'm like, no, this is not okay. So luckily, and I believe very intuitively, my husband ended up getting a secretary into his office whose soon-to-be mother-in-law owned a functional medicine practitioner. So she says, go see take her to my mother-in-law. And at the time, I was really down, feeling like I'm worthless. Anybody could take over this job as mom. I was kind of depressed, but also loving where I was at, which is kind of, that's kind of how depression works. There's parts of your life that you love, and there's parts of your life you feel really down on. But it all comes down to my nutrition. It all came down to my health. It all came down to ignoring myself, came down to suppressing who I really was. And so go to this functional medicine office, and it was amazing. They knew what was going on. They knew how to help me. They put me on a ton of supplements. They helped me change my diet. They helped me, put myself back in front of the show. So I tell this a lot to my own clients. I say, I want you to be the star of your show. I want you to take part and take ownership that you are the star of your own show. You're not a supporting member. You are not the crew, which so many moms do, which so many wives do, which so many daughters and best friends do. They kind of step back, right? And this is not what I want for any of my clients. And I was not practicing doing what I do now, coaching or anything like that at the time. But they kind of helped me step back into my place, my role as the star of my own show in my own life. And so I started eating better. I took all these supplements. My body was so depleted. And all those symptoms almost went away within 6 weeks.
That's amazing.
It was incredible. At the same time, I find, and this might be a little woo-woo for everybody, but I found energy healing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what the heck is that? Well, getting
and I want to back up for 1 second for some of the ladies that joined late. We had this conversation about being raised. Both of us kind of had family members that were Catholic. And then I was raised by a recovering Catholic mom who was a Universalist and very woo-woo. And I met my husband who's devout Christian, and she had a similar background with her family, but also from a very early age had angels that would talk to her in essence. And so we're talking about angels, definitely something that has been woken up for me as well. I'm praying to Christ, but I'm also getting these messages of I love what you say, you hear that, look up and suddenly a car goes past you. My husband says, you have so many angels that work hard on you, because I'm I have so many, I'm called the absent-minded professor by my team, because I'm flit. So my angels have a lot to do to keep me. He was even look up in the parking lot, honey. My husband's one of my angels, I'm pretty sure too. But anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah. So, starting to get onto the emotional side of my healing, because I had that physical side, which is April. Oh my gosh, do I wish I had found April all those years ago to help me through this. It would have been, I feel like I would have healed faster. I still have some issues. I'm still working on getting my energy up, and but there's this emotional component that I had been ignoring, and I needed to start working on that and start understanding how my emotions play into this, how this ignoring myself, how suppressing that gift that I had as a kid on hearing these things, all kind of came into play. The funny part is that I never had any ear issues, but when I turned 30 and I was still continuing to suppress this part of me where I had received answers or received guidance as a little girl from angels, and then I closed it off. my eustachian tubes actually closed up because I had gotten more inspiration. And I kind of always had this knowing of like things that were going to come up. Like I would tell my husband, I don't think you should work with this person. I don't think you should do this deal. I don't have a good feeling about it. The worst part about it was that I was right. And things would go south, or somebody would like do something, that wasn't on the up and up, and he would have to cut ties or something like that. And I kept suppressing that though. And I kept going, this is just coincidence, and this is not really who I am. And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be like this weirdo. So through all of that, I'm getting these different symptoms. And if you look up emotionally, the symptoms of Hashimoto's, and I also had lupus, was diagnosed with lupus, and then this eustachian tube stuff, and given, like, I don't really have problems with almost any of it now, which is amazing. But it was the nutritional aspect, which you guys will get with April. I love her. But then there's the emotional aspect where I really had to overcome some of the emotions that I still held, some of the trauma through experiences that I had. And I don't want any of you to think, I haven't really experienced much trauma. If you are having any illnesses, disease, right? If you are experiencing like any fear or holding back from reaching your dreams or anything, there's probably an emotional aspect of trauma somewhere. There's little t and big T trauma, right? The big T is like a huge accident where you really got hurt, or someone that you lost a loved one, where there's a lot of grief involved. There's the little t where maybe some kids at school are like, I don't like the way you dress. Your food is weird. Where somebody says, are you okay? Like, it seems like you gained a little weight. Where you're like, oh, dang, that hurt. Those are the little T's that kind of build up over time. So some of us have experienced big T's, some of us, and a ton of little T's of trauma, and some of us have experienced lots of little T's. And those little T's do build up, and they cause these blocks where it's like, well, I'm not, they make us feel like I'm not worthy to move forward. I'm not worthy for these good things. I'm not worthy to have amazing health. I'm not worthy to receive answers and have intuition. I am a firm believer. I teach intuition, you guys. I teach how to get answers for yourself, to believe in yourself, to love yourself fully right where you're at. And then you can move forward. Once we uncover these blocks, and then we assimilate new beliefs back in of who you really are, then you can move forward. Then you can heal at a deeper level. And it is just so beautiful to be able to do this. I know I'm kind of like brushing over a lot, and I don't know how much you want me to go into, April.
Well, I love that you're, sorry, I have a feedback. I'm not sure if it's coming off of, here, let me spotlight me too. I love that you brought that up, because first of all, comparison is the thief to joy. And we often compare ourselves like, well, I didn't have this kind of trauma that my friend did, or, what wasn't that bad. And honestly, having done a lot of work with myself, with clients, it doesn't matter the severity, it's how our body incorporates it, right? And so we can have some block. For me, I had a huge block to putting myself first. And that felt selfish. And that felt like, I was hustling for worthiness by serving others all the time, right? I love Brene Brown.
That's huge.
Hustle for worthiness. So being able to kind of step back and go, and I also feel like I had this really blessed life that many of my friends growing up did not. My mom actually took in 2 of my girlfriends in high school, because one was in a really abusive home and the other one was, basically similar, but had been kicked out. So, to have this like very solid family to, for other people even to land on with, it felt like, I have nothing to complain about. And yet I had all of these things that were blocking that self-care. So I love that you bring that up, because that's so important, because we can't compare our own stuff and minimize it. We have to look at it and love ourselves through that, and tell our little kids it's okay. I love some of the work that I've done with you is really focusing on that little kid that's out front trying to do this big job because of whatever load she was carrying. So I appreciate that you brought that up. I think it would be fun. I know that we got a request yesterday as we were doing our Q&A and our orientation about kind of how do you kind of listen to those. How do angels talk to you in essence? And how could other people kind of open that up a little bit?
So there are so many ways, and there are some ways that are very out there in the world that people recognize. And you've got like some of these very famous mediums out there, and you just think, oh, they see images, they hear things, they feel things, and those are the very typical, if we want to get out to that point. And I do want to reiterate, like, I don't know everybody's beliefs or anything. Like, I am Christian. I always kind of ground in a place where I am inviting light in. And so, but I speak to a lot of audiences that have like a huge, vast array of different beliefs. And there might be atheists, there might be, I don't know what's going to be in the audience. So usually I will say your higher power, invite in your higher power. So put in place whatever that might be for you. So if it's Christ, if it's Heavenly Father, if it's, Gaia, which is like Mother Earth, if it's Buddha, whatever it might be for you. But I always make sure that I'm tapping into my higher power. We can't tap into our own energy when we are trying to heal, when we are trying to do these things, because we will get depleted. As humans, like in this human body, we know that we have like a finite amount of energy we can exert until we get tired. And then we have to refuel and rest up, right? Mm-hmm. But ways that, and my abilities might be different than yours, but my abilities kind of are usually like, I can see things. So it's not like I actually like see right in front of me, like a whole vision or something, but I can see it in my mind, kind of like a dream. Things will pop up. I will get an overwhelming feeling about something. And it's funny because I was just thinking this morning and pondering some things, and sometimes that feeling we get, usually what our intuition is doing. I'm going to give a definition really quick. So intuition is inner knowing. It is like our inner school that we have, and we all have it. It is that inner knowing that we have as spiritual beings to be able to know things that we have never been taught before, that we haven't been told by somebody else. So using your intuition in order to get those answers, trusting yourself, and that can be a journey all on its own. Mm-hmm. But like when I was little, I didn't have traumas at that time. We went through a lot, but it really didn't affect me to a point where I was timid, and that did come from traumas, but I didn't have anything blocking that intuition, that connection to hearing those angels go, hey, Jazmin, don't go over there. Hey, don't cross the street, and things like that. So you can get your intuition through so many different ways. One of the ways I love is meditating. I love to sit and meditate, but meditating does not have to mean sitting on your bum or sitting in a chair and having that silent moment. For me, a lot of times meditating is driving, just getting into a place where I feel like I'm talking with the spirit, where I'm thinking about something that's been on my mind or on my heart, and being able to just open myself up to let answers flow, kind of like open communication.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I love that you mentioned driving, because that's the time I'm distracted enough by driving to not be distracted enough by everything else.
Yeah. Another big one is cleaning. Cleaning, you get into your zone and you are like scrubbing, like you can move through emotions so well while you're scrubbing something, you know, while you're vacuuming, while you're doing dishes. You just get into this momentum where you're just going and going. But I just taught a 7-week intuition course, and, you know, we start at the root chakra, and all of these different chakras, like they have been scientifically proven that they're there, but we just over here in like the Western hemisphere, we don't know so much about them. But in the root chakra, we talk about how one of the biggest abilities of someone with a strong root chakra is to be able to organize. And it might seem like so boring. It might seem, you know, the secretarial work, the getting into nature, but feeling like you belong. And that is a huge thing. And that is different. So all of the ways that angels speak to me is kind of like up in the higher chakra area. And I know that sounds probably so weird, but when we get into those lower chakra areas, we get into this aspect where we're learning how to organize, we're learning how we belong, we're learning how to feel, we're learning about food, we're learning about the foods that we want to take into our bodies. And that might not seem intuitive. It is extremely intuitive, and it is almost something becoming like a lost art of knowing and loving how to organize. The home edit, have any of you guys watched it? Like that is root chakra intuitive right there.
What is it called? It cut out a little bit.
Oh, sorry. So the show called The Home Edit.
Oh, huh.
It's an organizing show. So we don't have cable at my house, but my daughter like will stream it. She's 16 and she loves to organize. She loves to keep things like, you know, in nice little containers and all tidy. And I mean, she's getting rid of bags of stuff in her room like all the time, just to make sure that everything is nice and tidy. And this is part of her intuition where she just knows. She knows how to do this stuff. And I find it so beautiful. I find it inspiring because that is not one of my gifts, to keep everything like all perfect and tidy and make it look like magazine presentable. So it can.
I have to say, we just went through that with this house because we're staging it to sell. And I'm like, I want to live like this. It feels so good.
Yeah.
That is not my strength. Organization is not my strength.
and everybody has, I mean, gosh, if we want to talk about April's strength, oh, she has such fire. She has such fire to get out and go. And I absolutely love it. Like it is a mix of her heart and her solar plexus. So that's in your belly region. And that is like the fire energy where you can like take action and you get an idea and you make it happen. And it is beautiful, beautiful. I am also not that intuitive type. And so again, to see somebody else live in a way that is like, oh, I'm going to make that happen. I can absolutely do that. And you just see April like get these things done. You're like, how did, like, you just had that idea and then you just did it.
You were part of the, I'm going to wrap it up a little bit because I want to do question and answer. But you are part of the impetus to some of that, because in that people pleasing mode, right? I would get these ideas and I'm like, I can't possibly do all of those things because I'll be judged for doing them all. And then you were like, but what if you have that capacity? And what if that's a good thing to, just kind of prove it maybe? And so I was like, oh, hold on, the floodgates have opened, and they really have. And I haven't really told you a lot of the other things, but it's like, it all happens and it all flows when you let it. And I think oftentimes we get worried about it being too much, or worried about what other people will think, or any of those different things. So I'm super grateful for you for that, some of that permission that I can do more than one thing. And then really, truly just being able to have that space. I think as we get older, to find those people in your life that are on your same wavelength and able to have these beautiful, deep conversations. I appreciate you so much. So thank you so much for being on. I'm going to post some information on your website and all of the beautiful things that you do, because we haven't even I think we talked about this much of the amazing stuff that you do. But we can get more information about that. Isa, if you would mind wrapping up the recording, we will go into live question and answer.